Greetings, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Way of the Showman, where we view the world through the lens of showmanship. I am Captain Frodo, and I will be your host and your guide along the way. And today we are talking to Jellyboy the Clown, and he has written a memoir, which is called The Memoir of a Coney Island Clown. I'm not going to talk much about that, since we have an excellent conversation going for about 2 hours, talking about all sorts of things. But those of you who have followed this podcast for a while or know me in person know that I spent a significant portion of my performing career from 1998 until 2004. I performed pretty much exclusively either on the street or in a freak show, sideshow setting, with the Kamikaze Freak Show, with John Kamikaze and Pinky Pinky, the hermaphrodite, and Yum Yum, the pinhead, and all sorts of other crazy freaks. And that was also where I first met the Trash, the Sword Swallower, or the now that I've had the pleasure of helping me getting in contact and into Cirque du Soleil, Amy Saunders, who now has Misbehaved's game show on cruise ships with Virgin and I don't know what. So it was a very formative time, and then we started the Happy Sideshow. That was in first show was very first month, or was it February or something, or whatever, of 2000. In fact, we did a show in 1999, which was the first show. Then we didn't call ourselves the Happy Sideshow, we just called ourselves the Super Dudes, I think. That was the fashion of the time, at a festival celebrating the total eclipse of the sun in Cornwall in 1999. But so there were excellent times, and I find all the way through this conversation and through reading this excellent memoir, which to anyone who has read any memoirs of a Sideshow or Carney people, this is as brilliant as they get. So without further ado, let's jump in and meet Eric, and aka Jellyboy the Clown, and let's get cracking. And please note that today's episode mentions suicide. It's a tragic event in Jellyboy's life, and it becomes a transformative event. But it's still, for those of you who need it, it is talked about from about 43 minutes into the episode to about 50 is the main portion of it. But the topic of this is so important in the becoming of Jellyboy the Clown, and the theme is touched on a few times, just so you know. If you do enjoy this podcast, please consider subscribing. It's the very best way and most immediate way that you can support it. You know, if you don't want to go to Captain Frodo at I can't even remember what that is. It's so long ago since I've mentioned it on this show. What is it called again? Oh yeah, Captain Frodo /buymeacoffee.com. That's right. And then you can buy me a digital coffee. Anyway, don't worry about that. Just subscribe to the podcast. That's all I want. And without further ado, here, let's go. Yeah, man. It's been it's strange to meet you now online here, because we've never met in person, and that has happened before on this podcast, that I meet someone for the first time. But here it's different, because I, in a weird way, really feel like I know you, or because I know your story and know so much about your trials and tribulations as a showman, making it as a showman in this modern world. So it's great to meet you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you too, because I feel like I know you because I've listened to your podcast so often, and I've seen, videos of your performances, and, heard stories about you and all that. And so, you've always been kind of just like this voice in the back of my mind, helping me out, guiding me around. And then when I sent you the book, I was surprised that you read it so fast and that you enjoyed it and wrote such a great review. Yeah.
Ah, man, I think it was also, it's also, I was reading it and reading a chapter or so a day, and then I went on a gig and I had to fly away, and it was real bad connections on the airline thing for me to leave on the day. So I had to leave a day early for the gig and arrived, and so I had all this time, and for all the flights and long layovers, I read a big chunk of that book, like at least 2/3 of it or so, like in one go on the plane, sitting at the airports, and I got so drawn into it, and we can go into the different reasons for it, and it's also like when I've been thinking about it in hindsight, I it feels like the exactly the book for me, because it's talking about a scene that I too was really at home in for a long time. But I was kind of, it's actually, I got into circus in about 2004 or 5. 2004, I think I joined Circus Oz, and my act, that all my acts, sword swallowing and a blockhead and a tennis racket act, even the legs behind the head on the cans. It's like they're all sort of sideshow acts, but I have since, like, the core skill at the heart of them are sideshow things. But since 2004, I've been mainly in circuses and variety and cabaret and whatever, which I don't know if that has to do just with that my acts managed to make them funny enough, or so that they could also belong in another part. And that's another thing that we share, being a sideshow clown. But you came into this at roughly like 2004. That's at least when the first chapter sort of opens.
Yeah, yeah. I came into it, from the perspective of a band, and I was in bands, since I was in high school, about 16 or something. But I didn't get, real serious with music until around 1998, 1999. But so I had the band in 1999, the Hydrogen Jukebox, and that band took me to the circus in a couple of uncanny ways. Uh, One was meeting a clown who traveled with punk rock circuses like the Know Nothings and the End of the World Circus in the early 90s. Or anyway, she's a fire clown. And then after that, I met Red Stewart, who's a sword swallower from the World of Wonders. And I was just working at a record shop, and we were putting shows together. And it's just these series of coincidences kind of led me to do Sideshow, because I was just more of a presenter of acts and a singer of songs. And um, then they, Red and his Sideshow buddy said, "You're really gonna need to learn an act and join our show."
Yeah, I mean that's also what felt so compelling to me. 'Cause, let's just take one step back before we're going straight into the story, and just say
All right.
you've written a book called Memoirs of a Side of a what? No, let me get the title correct.
Yeah.
Memoirs of a Coney Island Clown, Jellyboy's Sideshow Saga. So and the book is by, what is it, Outside Talker Press,
Yeah. Outside Talker Press from New York.
and the book is about to, I was going to say go live, but it's about to be released, so that you can have pieces of paper in your hand and read it for real. And is it going to be available as an ebook as well?
Yeah, it's going to be available as an ebook as well, and it's going to be in print probably by the 1st of July.
First
So,
of July. Yeah.
yeah, real soon. I mean, we're reading the proof of it right now, just trying to make sure everything is perfect before it's set in stone, and
Yeah.
then get it in, printed it. Yeah.
It's so exciting. Also, when I was reading it, what it also sort of chronicles is that thing that you already sort of touched on here, that which you managed to capture so well in your writing, the the way that it actually is to become the showman that you are, of how random things and the offer of a gig or the chance meeting of someone and what they said in that moment that led you to take some decisions to you do your first thing, and the next people who see you goes, oh, this guy is a Sideshow. You went from being like a talker and a musician and putting acts together or whatever, or like putting together events or whatever, and then all of a sudden everyone who sees you after that, you're going, oh, you have an act as well now. And that's what's captured so well time and time again throughout the book, of how these wonderful random events, you take them in and take them on and make something out of them. And yeah, so the book is also, from my point of view, it's so well written. As I was looking at some other books, I just looked at because we both obviously have an interest in Sideshow literature as well, and a lot of the Sideshow literature comes to us in the form of personal tales or memoirs or so. And the key text is, of course, the Memoirs of a Sword Swallower, which I wrote that down to send it to you. But I was like, your book, your first proper chapter opens, "The world's greatest nipple lifter called on the telephone." And when I read that, I couldn't remember what the opening sentence of the Memoirs of a Sword Swallower was, but it immediately connected me to that. I was going, yeah, it immediately captures you into this Sideshow world of like the world's greatest nipple lifter. And I looked up the sentence in Daniel P. Mannix's Memoirs of a Sword Swallower, where he says, "I probably never would have become America's leading fire eater if Flamo the Great hadn't happened to explode that night." And I loved that picture of where, like, in the opening sentence of the book, you already just you capture something. Like, we have monikers or stage names, and there are like it's brought in, and I thought you captured it so well, and it immediately felt like it placed your book into the greater context of Sideshow literature. And now I'm getting to the point. I was Googling just before this at the Freaks and Fire book, which we also both read and which comes out in your book. And I also thoroughly enjoyed it. And somebody had written in a review on Goodreads for that one that, a lot of these Sideshow books or whatever, they are written by people who are first and foremost performers and who then write a book. And it's clear that it's not written necessarily by somebody who's a good writer, but the way that you've put your story together, not just the stories that you have to tell, but how you've told them and the structure of the book and how it sort of picks up pace and goes across the Atlantic. And so it sort of keeps building in towards the end. And then it has this strange kind of foreboding and ending of almost an apocalyptic nature, which is a beautiful sort of book ending of the book. So anyway, that was a lot of talking from me, but just to kind of give the people who haven't read the book yet, which is probably most of these people because it's not out yet. So that's right. Just saying, it's more than just a tale of your story of exactly what you did, although that is the only thing that's what the book is about. But it somehow feels like a tale that really can capture somebody who is young, and the way that I felt when I was discovering these things. When I was first going around and before the internet, because this is you in 2004, that was a year before YouTube was invented. So True. We're in a time when you travel around with a book and you meet people that you've only read about in the book. And I did the same. I traveled around and met people that I'd read about in books or that I had read about in magazines or whatever. So we really share that. So anyway, that was a big rant from me and no questions, but just to kind of give my listeners my take on your book, sort of off the top. So let me formulate a question. So you were doing your first act. You were sitting there with Red Stewart, and he was saying you should get yourself an act. And was that your first encounter with Sideshow?
Well, Um, it was that was not my first encounter with Sideshow, because when the book's going on, I think that first meeting is like after we did a show
Oh yeah,
together,
that's right.
and they're
Yeah.
saying to me, you presented the act so well. We want you to be the talker of our show, but if you're the talker of our show, you can't just stand there and talk and tell jokes and be a clown. Like, you have to be able to you know put a cigarette out on your tongue, or
Yeah.
stick a screwdriver up your face and turn the gears in your head or something. You have to make some acts,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if they're simple acts, even if they're acts that maybe like a novice could attempt. Not the most dangerous acts like fire eating or sword swallowing, but some of the kind of foundations.
Yeah.
And what you said about Memoirs of a Sword Swallower. I mean, obviously, I named the book Memoirs of a Coney Island Clown because of Memoirs of a Sword Swallower, and I wanted to kind of tip my hat to that, and just for all those who knew of that book,
Yeah.
to let them know, like, oh, okay, this is kind of like building on that. This is a reference, and it, because I would never have read that book if the Enigma hadn't have handed it to me, and when I was just a brand new sword swallower, and said, hey, check this out. And of course, he's the person that I was reading about in the book Freaks and Fire, when I was at this tattoo convention. I was reading this book, and there's the Enigma, blue man, puzzle pieces. Um, Looking at him, he's got this weird smile in the photo, and then I look up and I see, wow, there's a blue guy carrying an armful of tattoo trophies walking across the floor right now, and I just had to approach him and say, hey, I was just reading about you're in this book. And he's like, really? Let me see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So
just
that book is
odd.
called Freaks and Fire by J.D. Hill. I was just looking at that, and it captures a glimpse of, like, it's called like the I can't find where I wrote it down, but it's like an
the
underground.
reinvention of the underground circus or something.
Yeah. And it captures a whole bunch of shows, circus contraptions and yard dogs and all these shows that I hadn't heard of, and that came in sort of right when we were starting to do really well with the Happy Sideshow. We were doing Sideshow, the Happy Sideshow from about 2000 to about 2004. And
Nice.
yeah, it was great to see, like, you go, oh, it makes you feel like you are, even though we didn't know most of these people. I had worked with Enigma I can't remember, maybe that was in year 2000 or something, at a gig we did together a month or so in Vienna. But I didn't know most of those shows, and it was just sort of cool to feel like you're part of something bigger, part of a movement. And this was just sort of before those shows were chronicled, just before your story starts as well, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. And that was all happening on the west coast of America, and Happy Sideshow was happening in Australia, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Australia,
I was in Philadelphia, and it's kind of weird. It's like there's movements that are happening simultaneously that are not necessarily even aware of each other, and it's kind of like this whole thing of evolution or learning. When it's a story about like monkeys, like washing fruit, like learning how to wash fruit, and it's like unrelated monkeys in different places. It's not like they're teaching each other. It's like all of a sudden they all just kind of learn it at the same time. It's like in the collective unconscious, or in the air.
Yeah, the 100th monkey. Yeah, it's a really interesting. Yeah, and I mean, you see it from my friend Jay Gilligan. We're talking a lot about juggling because he's a juggler, and he, like, it's you go to the convention one year and there's a 5-ball competition, and then when they first started in the 80s or whatever, there was only like 15 people in this competition, and then the next year there's X amount, and then and now there's like more people doing 7 balls than there were 5 balls, and it's like the whole game is just lifting or whatever. It's interesting how it grows like that. But yeah, it's I wonder, because in a sense I was interested in freak show stuff, and for me the very first connection that I had to this kind of performance was through Hover Fjell from Oslo, who you worked with from Pain Solution.
Yeah.
So that
So
might have been
you got
maybe
into
94.
Sideshow through Hove from Pain Solution.
So back in 1993, that was when I first encountered Sideshow. So I had my nipples pierced by Hover and this is 1993. There was no tattoo studios. There was no studios that officially did piercing in Oslo. But then through another friend who I knew, because I juggled at that point and was doing circus, I met Hover, and they said he can do it. And we went home to his place, and he pierced my nipples. And then that same summer, the Jim Rose Circus came to this music festival in Denmark, and I saw them there. So for me, it was like, out of that show, I mean, it was Lifto, but Enigma as well. Enigma, who just he showed a dedication to something which I had only, because at that point I think I only had maybe 2 books or something. I had the Daniel P. Mannix's book, We Who Are Not As Others, and then a French book that was translated into English on Freak Show. So I was aware of it, but I was only aware of it as a historical thing. So when I saw Jim Rose, it sort of opened my mind to this, and seeing Enigma, who at that point was very early in his transformation, didn't have horns and everything, but it just showed this dedication to this art form, and it made it just completely clear in my mind that this is a thing, and it's a thing, and it is still alive, happening now, because all the books at that time in the mid-90s were all historical. So then, like the year after or so, Hover was doing something and we had met and whatever, and he invited me to come and be part of some gigs or whatever, because I did the Straight Jacket Escape and I did some other where we walked together on broken glass and stuff. So that was the first kind of freak show stuff that I did, and then I sort of took that on and did it at home in my hometown and did a few sort of freak gigs or whatever. So I guess Enigma was, and of course it's also the Jim Rose show. They were also surfing that wave early on.
Definitely they were, and they were inspiring lots of people along the way.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's so cool, because you're from Norway originally, right?
Yeah. I was away for 25 years and then moved back here when the pandemic came.
Right. And right now you're in Norway doing a show? You're in a caravan?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in the caravan. I'm doing a show in a theme park here. So the last 3 years I've been here as a circus performer, or doing my normal shtick, squeezing through the rackets and whatever. And then this year I'm get along really well with this crew who do this circus. Family of Danish clowns, like trad clowns with red nose, and very, very good people. And they said, oh, well, we would love to work with you on the next production as well, but we need to get new circus artists, because I've been in it for 3 years in a row. So this year I am here doing some magic and whatever, but I'm here as a character it's a theater mixed with circus, based on a very famous Norwegian children's story, well, famous here. And one section of this theme park is built up as this town from this story, and one of the guys in the book becomes a circus director after spending some time in jail, and him and his 2 relatives, the 3 thieves. I'm one of those brothers, or they're not actually brothers, but people think they're brothers. 3 guys. So I'm here. This will get to the point. I'm here as an actor mainly, and I've never done that before. I mean, I'm doing magic, and we do some illusions, and we do a bunch of stuff, but it's been quite a a journey, mainly learning lines and behaving as this character, and he speaks in a very different dialect to my own, so I've had to get that under control, and so it has been quite a journey for me. I've always been, as we sometimes are, hiding behind our tricks, and when it's just you there and just the audience, it's like, as much as Red Stewart might have said, oh, you need to get an act as well, it's not just enough to do the talking, but you can do a lot of connecting and a lot of good alchemy with just with talking as well.
Yeah, just with talking and going outside of your comfort zone, because we're usually just like we're our own characters and our own alter egos. But sometimes if you do, a movie or a play, you have to take on another character, or and that's a challenge.
So that this almost then touches on, because you are a clown, and there's an early thing in your book where you sort of go, yeah, because I also called myself a sideshow clown when I was doing it, because I was absolutely 100% going for the laughs, but I didn't do the makeup and the nose and everything. So, and can't remember who said it, but someone told you, it's like, oh, you're doing a clown or whatever, you should go more hardcore and be a sideshow performer. And you asked the questions like, but can't you be both a clown and a sideshow performer? That being a quote from the book. And you are, of course, then the proof that it could happen. But so tell me a little bit about becoming Jellyboy and finding the face and the nose act with the blockhead and that stuff, is because that really sort of seemed to sort of capture for me this transformation from you, Eric, into Jellyboy or whatever.
Yeah, it was well, the real story of it is, at the time I was, playing in a band, and I was really sad because my older brother had, committed suicide in 1999, and I wrote about that in the book. So you know about that, and I was writing sad music, and at a certain point, I realized that I didn't want to, sing a song that would make people cry. Like I wanted to sing a song that would make people want to dance and shout and, have a great time, to kind of get away from the pain of everything. And from a place of pain, though, you can really make people laugh. And so when I took on the alter ego, it was so that I could have like a mask, and in a mask, I felt like I had more freedom to be myself than when I had my own face. So that was why I chose the clown. And at first, I didn't use makeup. I just put on some crazy neon green spandex pants with black polka dots, and wore some crazy tailcoat, and I glued a nose onto my face. And I found that I really didn't like the glue. It was like very irritating. and so that kind of led, when I did learn the blockhead, I thought, I kind of don't like gluing this on over and over again. Let me see if I can maybe like hammer it onto my face. That'll be more of a sideshow stunt. And I can make jokes about the glue and being allergic to the glue and stuff. So that's where the blockhead clown nose came in, because I was trying to put my own spin on the blockhead, because I noticed that there was a traditional formula to it, and it was kind of an act that everybody did the exact same version of, and it was all about Melvin Burkhart, and then I started realizing, like, well, okay, Melvin Burkhart, yeah, he basically made the act famous, but the act is way older. Goes just like sword swallowing is way older, and it goes back to ancient times, with fakirs and mystics doing these unbelievable acts. And I just thought, maybe I'm not a mystic or a fakir, but I'm a clown, so I'm different than the Sideshow guys who have created this amazing formula. And then I thought, well, okay, I should definitely take aspects of the classic of what Melvin Burkhart is doing, but I should write my own jokes and I should make my own face. So, eventually a friend who knew about clown makeup told me, hey, listen, you're going to need to have your own face. So best way to do it is to draw a whole bunch of ovals and experiment with putting different faces on all these ovals, and then kind of take the best aspects of those things and mix them together and find the right face. So we drew it over and over again in the sketchbook, and finally I found the face and painted it on. And he said, hey, listen, clowns, they have to powder their face with a sock. You can't use a powder puff. You have to use a sock, and you can keep all your makeup in that sock. And so, I would just had my grease paint, kept it all in the sock with some brushes, and then bam, bam, powdered it on, and every layer, get some more powder so that the face could stay on. And then eventually I would just like kind of live in that face, and I would stay in the face for days at a time and like just touch it up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in your story as it progresses as well. And this face, it's you've done a gig, and of course you might have 2 gigs in a day, and you go for a period there you're going from Coney Island to and into the city to be in New York, to be in Ringling Brothers. No, not Ringling Brothers.
Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Ripley's Believe It or Not, of course, yeah. And I'm assuming there that you had your face on just for that whole, like, lots of shows a day in town, and then on the train. Like, it's a bit of a train ride. I haven't been to Coney Island myself, but how long is it to go from New York City to out to Coney Island?
It's quite a train ride. Coney Island's at the end of Brooklyn. It's like the last stop on the train. So, sometimes it takes an hour, sometimes it takes 2 hours. It's like going to a whole other city. Like from Philadelphia to New York, I get 2 hours on the Chinatown bus. But so Coney Island's like its own weird branch of New York, like the very edge.
Yeah. But that, it's and then you be there 2 hours on the train looking like you do. I mean, maybe because it's New York City, people don't look twice at you, because there are probably people that are weirder and more intimidating than you on that train line. But it's just a cool thing to have that face on. It's just like projecting a certain something. And did you find that wearing that face as you were going through the real world, that you interacted with it differently because you were met differently?
Yeah, I was met in many extreme ways, but for the most part, people were quite happy, or they laughed. But though some people would scream, and I almost made somebody fall off their bicycle. One time they just noticed me and they're like, they fall off their bicycle. Another time, people come up to me and they're rude, and they say all these, messed up things about clowns, or ask me if I'm in the insane clown posse or something like that. And I don't have anything against the insane clown posse or juggalos or anything. Though there was a time when I was a little resentful, because I was like, I'm not in the insane clown posse. I am a sideshow performer. You don't understand. This is a hip hop culture thing, And but now I see, that all these kind of insults, like people would come out to me and they'd be like, what are you in a Kiss cover band? People just say like the most ignorant things that just like are on the surface of their mind. They think they can say whatever they want. And then, other people, like they know their friend is afraid of clowns, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, hey, listen, my friend's afraid of clowns. Could you scare him for me? I like on the subway, and then like I'll be like, all right, well, if you guys are in on it and they're not going to punch me in the face, I'll scare them, So that kind of stuff would happen. And then also I would sleep on the train a lot.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it was odd because I would end up like seeing picture of me sleeping on the train in my clown makeup, like posted on some weird blog on the internet. Somebody be like, "Yeah, I saw you on this blog. You were sleeping on the train in your clown makeup," you know?
Yeah, no, it's cool, but it's interesting how you say it's like you put your mask on and you become more free to be yourself or to express yourself in ways not hindered by your regular self. So the mask gives a kind of freedom, and it's also interesting that you talk about, which I'd love to return to as well, of like how the death of your brother triggered in you this hard push towards doing something positive to get yourself out of the cycle and to maybe a positive change in the world. And which of course means that you then have this archetypal image of the sad clown and got the smile on their face painted on, but you're actually quite broken inside. And it's like you were talking about the ancient origins of sword swallowing and all that, like that Rogan Taylor talks about in the Death and Resurrection show, of the link of shamans to performers and clowns in particular. So I think you're right on track there, going like we are, like the clown is an aspect of those and can take on those powerful transformations that the shamans were doing, including their tricks and everything, and there's something transformational about it. And I think there's something in this murkiness that might be part of what triggers this fear of clowns or so, because few things says otherness or I am different, or that says that you're a misfit, like being in a clown outfit with a painted face on the train. Like it's so strange, which people like, because you've called yourself like a living cartoon or so, and I think people react from the sound of it. It's like they react to it that way as well, like all those different kinds of reactions. It's just, you just all of a sudden you see something, think it, and then because you look like that, it seems like it's appropriate to say these things or to do them. So in a weird way, it's like this deep shamanic chaos and whatever you want to call it. It's like it comes out and it immediately triggers these responses to have kind of normal people fall off their bike, or people shout at you or insult you or share something that they might never have thought to share before. So it's got this bizarre sort of chaotic influence.
Yeah, exactly. And there is a mystical or a spiritual aspect to being in makeup and being a clown that performs, because from my perspective, I was trying to reach out and connect to the spirit world, or to people who had died too soon, or artists that just were amazing people in life, that they didn't really get the chance to finish what they started. And I thought, if I can take on like other kind of souls, like my brother, um, then it could reach people on a deeper level, even if it was subliminal, even if I didn't come out and say, hey, I'm trying to celebrate and honor uh, artists who have died, maybe by their own hand, maybe by an accident, or a drug overdose, or something like that. I'm trying to like bring them with me in a sense. So the idea is that I'm also performing to people that are not alive, as well as people that are alive. And when I was in Japan one time at a bar, this old guy came up to me and he said, there's elements of your clown face that are both from kabuki theater, that reminded him of kabuki theater, and also that reminded him of this type of makeup that a Buddhist monk would put on when they would walk into a graveyard, and there was this makeup protected them from evil spirits, and I never realized that. But I thought when he said it, I was like, well, that's weird, because that's kind of like, in a sense, like why I like this kind of scary clown makeup, and because it protects me in a sense, but also I don't think I'm really a scary clown. I think it's like I'm one of those weird clowns that's like a flip, like where people might think initially like, oh, this guy's scary, but then when as soon as they hear me talk, or they get a feeling from me, they realize, oh, he's not really out to hurt
Yeah.
anybody. He's more of a understanding, individual that and a lot of people have said, I'm really scared of clowns, but you cured me of my
Yeah.
phobia.
But it's interesting. I was just listening to this interview on Huberman's Lab with James Hollis. He's some Jungian psychiatrist, psychologist, and he was talking in passing, but talking about initiation rituals where the grown men of the tribe, and he was talking about it in the context of we don't have these initiations that was specifically for young men being initiated into being men or hunters from being boys or whatever, and that this is something that's lacking from our society. But be that as it may, he just sort of talked about how when the men then would do these rituals in these tribes that he was talking about, which I unfortunately don't remember what he might have said some more specific, but they were wearing masks. And he said it in such an offhanded kind of way, and and they were all wearing masks because they weren't individuals, they were the archetypes of the hunters. So you weren't gonna, the kids, boys who were about to become men, weren't there with John and Olav and whatever, the different guys from that thing. You just offhanded kind of way that he said, like he was going, oh, there they were, and they were wearing masks, of course, because it was about something deeper, and now it was hunters initiating boys into men. And I thought that thing with the mask there, and when he said it, it seemed so plausible and so gone, oh, there you go, that just seemed so deep, but he said it so simply. And the way that you're talking now as well, it's like, is something primal kind of stuff comes out, whether it is the stuff that you shared about Japan and the encounters on the midway of life or whatever from people, and then connecting this to the Hopi Indian clowns or the sacred like Crazy Wise is a sort of sweet documentary about that, with people with difficult mental situations, and this old notion, North American, Native American tribes who have these kind of holy fools or so traditions, and also this, like, which of course there's the shamanic kind of birth of the shaman through pain, which I couldn't help but, because it's an interest of mine, and I see that in your story that we've already sort of touched on. So you want to share some stuff about your brother, maybe?
Yeah, sure. The whole idea of being a shaman, I guess. I mean, I don't consider myself a shaman, of course, because it's not my culture. But I totally understand the cross references of the idea, because a shaman is somebody who communicates with the ancestors, with the spirit world, and brings magic from them, and uses it to help guide every aspect of their lives, or help people through hard times. And like you were saying, in the Native American traditions, like with the Okipa or the Sundance, there's a clown who comes in and he does everything backwards, and he mocks the people as they're hanging from hooks, and trying to stay conscious, not in their fasting, and they're putting themselves through this so that they can become warriors. Um, but to understand life on a greater level, you do have to understand pain, and pain is not just physical; it's emotional, and sometimes dealing with mortality and dealing with death is one of the most painful things that you can do. And also the idea that pain can be so great that it can make you want to end your life is a very bizarre notion to me, because there have been so many amazing people that have thought the world would be better off without them, or that they didn't want to stick around. um, And when my brother uh, committed suicide in 1999, it was definitely a shock. It shook up my whole world. And before that, I was an artist. I was writing songs, but a lot of them were like love songs and things like that. And yeah, I wasn't writing like strange songs. And so, but after he died, I I started getting more of his spirit into my spirit. And he was a surrealist artist and had tons of stories about just the weirdest characters, and sculpted unreal creatures. And he was just always functioning in a different way. And he was struggling with schizophrenia, and lots of things happened in his life that kind of pushed him. And eventually he did shoot himself. And I went into the room where he shot himself, and I saw his blood all over the walls, all over his paintings, and under his bed. Like in the book I talk about it, there was like a unicycle that I'd given him, that I tried to learn how to ride, and I couldn't ride it. I gave it to him. I was like, maybe you'll have better luck. And he had it in his room. He really loved the idea of riding a unicycle. And it was under his bed, and it was just like, you know, blood, like coagulated, like his brains were on the unicycle, and like his pieces of his skull were all over the room. And I'm in there, like in this kind of unreal fog, just like trying to find his art and trying to find the things that would be valuable to the future. And I I realized at that point I was with my other brother, and my other brother and I were really close in age, and we've always done music together. And when we were in a band together, and we decided, look, there shouldn't be any other way. If we have a dream to be artists, we should be artists. We shouldn't listen to people who say, hey, you might not want to quit your day job. You might want to have a fallback plan or something like that. I was like, no, there's no fallback plan. There's no plan B. It's like, we're going to do this, and we're going to follow this, and we're going to take it to wherever it leads us. And it's going to be successful. Um, so yeah, the pain aspect is when you understand like the ultimate pain. I mean, you've been faced with that, then you can talk to people at whatever, you can meet people wherever they are, is the idea. And with the show, I'd like to think that we're meeting people where they are, like even hecklers, and people that aren't really trying to help us push the show forward. We take that and we redirect it like a mental martial artist or something like that. You just take the heckler and you move the force, and send them flying, and get everybody laughing, and basically use what's against you to make the show go forward. And so that's the aspect, I guess, that you're talking about the pain.
Yeah,
brings wisdom.
absolutely. And it's this thing that the shaman, and when I use shaman as well, it's, I mean, it's a sort of, the word comes from Siberia, I think, originally, but, and it's, I guess it can be questionable to how much the shaman in Central Africa and the shaman in Greenland and in Tunguska, or how they are exactly the same. But the thing that makes them the same beyond name and all this is that they do very similar things in these extremely different cultures who had nothing to do with each other, which makes me feel like they're all tapping into a similar archetypal aspect of humanity, of what is important for us. And the birth of these often comes through mental illness, that what we call it, or people who are mentally different, who schizophrenia, these things, people who then can find solace and be born again as this other kind of character. That, and what you say about the pain, you, that gives that birth. I remember from the book that you sort of, what in my mind, you make this kind of promise or so at the end of this, like you just sort of described it, but that it actually is like a, well, this is it, it's plan A all the way. It's like, and that to me, just because you don't talk about shamanism, all this sort of stuff here is stuff that we're now talking about the book, because the book is a rip-roaring read and it flows really fast and it goes through, but it touches on all of these deep topics without lingering on it, which I find that that I had to stop reading at times, because I'm reading and then I'm like, oh, this is, I'm seeing how this connects up to things in my own direct life, and here, like this thing with shamanism and how that's sort of born, and the clown comes out. It's like, it's because we're still only a couple of chapters into this book, so we're dealing a lot of the with this, but thanks for sharing that. It's beyond graphic. When you tell it now, I'm shocked again, and it's moving and to then take something so extreme, and when you manage to have processed that in the way that you did, I love this notion that you then, when you have been right down there and you're writing sad songs and you do all this, and then you have this transformation of going, I want to put something else into the world. That is feels like this monumental move, and that it is this start of something big. Because I guess we should move into the next kind of big thing of the Squidling brothers, which I can't remember. I don't know, we're not following the story quite, and we don't need to tell the whole story because the book does that. So this is to give a few glimpses of what it is, but maybe give us a little bit, because that became like a, what can you call it, like a focal point or whatever for a whole bunch of your creativity, which goes from puppetry to the band Hydrogen Jukebox, so it always had like live music and all, and sideshow freak show stuff, and your unique style of clowning and how that all kind of came together. So you want to share a little bit of what was going on with the Squidling brothers?
Yeah, well, the Squidling brothers came out of the Hydrogen Jukebox's show called Carnivolution, and the idea of Carnivolution was very tentacle-like, because it was reaching out into all different art forms to bring them all together into one show, like an octopus's tentacles or squid's tentacles. And we had modern dance. It was a big part, because I was studying modern dance at the time. I was also studying, religion, which is interesting, because I was studying world religions, comparative religions of all theology from around the world, and modern dance.
So funny. That was the last subject what I applied for when I went instead to do a 3-month circus course. I had applied for a comparative religious studies at the Copenhagen University where I was living at the time, and never came back, and never did any official studying, but I've been reading. I love reading about religion and everything. So that's so interesting. That Sorry to interrupt
No,
your
no, it's fine. That's cool. That's a cool
link.
thing that we share, a link. Yeah. Because and then it also goes back to what you were saying about shamanism. It's like there's this religious aspect to clowning and to circus and expressing those things, but it all like, and also it's all connected across all cultures. um but anyway, the idea of the tentacles, from the Carnivolution created the Squidling Brothers, because we weren't always called the Squidling Brothers Circus Sideshow. It was just kind of like the Hydrogen Jukebox had this show, and it was a variety show, and we brought out a belly dancer, and then we brought out a sword swallower, and then we brought out a puppeteer and a poet, and there was people painting pictures as the show was going on, and it was like this huge spectacle. And it's really difficult to carry a whole band and a whole circus around in a bus, and take it around and make it profitable and all that. So we were lucky that we had like some festivals that gave us a certain budget, and we were able to actually hire some people in the beginning. But once we got that going, then we started having these underground parties, and the Squidling Brothers came out of these underground parties that the Hydrogen Jukebox was throwing at this art museum in West Philadelphia. And that's called the Tiberino Museum, and that's in the book. It's this backyard of like 5 different houses. The backyards are all connected, and this one family of artists lived there, and like the whole compound is just wall to wall murals, and they're 3-dimensional murals that stick out. And so we were having our shows in that space, and the band was on one side of the yard, and then there was a sideshow stage on the other side of the yard. And the sideshow started becoming storylines, like old serial, like an old Batman show or something like that. And we started talking to the puppets, and the puppets were part of the sideshow, because there was an ongoing story, and we were fighting these villains, these weird villains like Mr. Commercial and Star Commander and stuff like that, and we were just using our sideshow abilities to fight them. And we were flying around with this alien grandma named Grandma Madudai in a nipple-shaped spaceship, and traveling through time and space and interdimensional pockets and stuff. And but the sideshow was the main event. It was like the thing that made people scream the loudest. But people loved the absurdist theater. And so that's where the Squidling Brothers came from. And eventually, sadly, the band, after 11 years, kind of broke up and peeled away, and allowed the Squidling Brothers to kind of just take off into the world, because it's so much easier to travel as a sideshow performer than it is a rock and roll band.
Yeah, you need so much equipment. And I mean, just to jump again there to you going with Betty Bloomers, you guys went to Amsterdam. And and I've been talking a little bit to Jay Gilligan lately about this of touring, when you have to tour on planes and trying to tour with our equipment. And you have a whole little section of where you talk about how you guys are needing to see what can we actually bring on an intercontinental flight, like without paying an arm and a leg to get the stuff with us. And then you whittle it down to what you tell the story of how, because I love the way that you sort of, okay, we can only bring this, and then you guys did some gigs to see, well, what does the show look like when we only have these things or whatever.
Yeah, because we were really elaborate with our prop setups, and we had so much stuff, and when we realized we had to take it all in flight, the idea just came to us like a bed of nails. Like, how are we going to take a bed of nails on a plane? Because our bed of nails was like so heavy.
Yeah.
And, you know, it just occurred to us like, oh, aluminum or aluminium. We'll take these gutter spikes and pop them into a bed of nails, and it was infinitely lighter, wouldn't rust, you know, and it's just as sharp and just as nasty. But we were able to pack that in and take it on the plane with the. We basically, you know, looked at the weight and height requirements for luggage and made a bed of nails that fit that, and
Yeah.
you know, also made a sword ladder that, and kind of like the bed of nails and the sword ladder was one box, and
Yeah.
then that could carry stuff, and it had wheels, and you know, so we just we had to figure out like, hey, what could fit in a taxi,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because we didn't have a car at the time. Like, you know, now we travel with van and everything, but in those days we were like taking boats and taxis and walking through cities with our gear and jumping on the plane, and you know, we were just we were we didn't have any back problems or anything at the time. You know, we could carry as much as we possibly could, and we had a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Um,
The back
but
problems came shortly after.
yeah, they
When-
come after you. You pull all your gear around the world a couple times.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, pulling it through the snow and it's icy cold and
Yeah,
it's
and
like,
flip and knock yourself out.
yeah. There's just several of those images from your book of being on the road, or like not on the road, not with a car, and you have all this equipment to lug around, and then you need to do stuff, and there's always somebody's got to sit there with all of this gear because it's impossible to go and do anything at any kind of pace when you have so much stuff. So this is like I have memories of doing that where just you got more stuff than you can easily carry, and I mean, it's always like particularly early on in a career where you are trying to do it with it's only a few kilometers, we can save that money and not get a cab, and then you
Yeah,
it's like some of those adventures that comes from from just having too much luggage. And
yeah,
yeah.
too much luggage and not enough money, and trying to make
Yeah.
it happen.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. So in a way that you were saying you had read about Keith Bindlestiff, and you read about uh, Enigma, and then met him, and what that kind of made you. Oh, hang on, we got a dog here hanging out on the
That's
outside.
okay.
Two dogs. Go away. Go away.
Mhm.
There's 5 dogs in the camp, and my
Yeah.
dog comes on Monday, so then there'll be 6 dogs.
Oh wow.
Um, oh yeah. So you're meeting these people that you've only read about, and you have been performing at the Coney Island Freak Show, which I first sort of became aware of when I joined the Kamikaze Freak Show with John Kamikaze out of Edinburgh in 1998, and there was a half woman, half man, Baby D. She was performing she performed as Pinky, the hermaphrodite in that show, and she'd been performing at the Coney Island Freak Show, and that was just a whole mythical, or like the Sideshow by the seashore, and that was like a whole mythical kind of thing for me, because at the time, like, it was late 90s, so they couldn't Google anything, so it literally was like just her stories at night about what that was, and the idea that there was a permanent building that was housing a freak show. It just seemed like completely yeah, like mythical in the way that the Sideshow came out of America or whatever. So tell me a little bit about how you first encountered the show, or the Sideshow by the seashore at Coney Island, and then
Yeah,
how
yeah.
it went
You
on,
know,
because you kind of became the competition, like, as it goes on, or whatever.
yeah, yeah. We had some rivalry and stuff, but you know, eventually I was, you know, embraced by Coney Island, and I ended up working a few seasons from 2017 to 2021, where I could, book the performers and make the schedule and, talk the show and everything like that. But there was a long history before I was asked to come on in that capacity. Before that, I met the Coney Island performers by chance on my adventures. I went to Sideshow gathering in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where all these amazing sideshow performers were getting together from all over the country, and I saw Insectivora and Tyler Fire and Magic Brian for the first time, and they were doing a show together. And when I saw Insectivora, I was totally blown away, and I had found out, like, oh, these guys are all from Coney Island. But then, of course, I was just in the front row, just like with my eyes, wide open and my tongue on the floor, watching these guys perform, and I couldn't believe, how skillful they were and how funny they were. And then I met some Coney Island people again at the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention. And that was a crazy day, because that was the day that I was reading the Freaks and Fire book, and I looked up and saw the Enigma. And, on that same day, not only was Enigma there, also it was Disgraceland Family Freak Show mixed with the Coney Island Circus Sideshow. So it was like this hardcore Brooklyn sideshow that was like really taking things to like way up, raising the bar into like the modern primitive kind of, body piercing, body modification movement, mixed with Coney Island, the classic patter of Donny Vomit, and seeing Heather Holiday for the first time, and Insectivora was, there again. And I was just like something, I had too much excitement when I saw, I was like a blabbering, hyperactive child, basically. and I was like trying to explain to them like how important it was to me that I met them, and I ended up sounding a little bit overly enthusiastic and kind of insane, and it was cool. But then I went to see more of their shows in New York when I found I would like look up on the internet at the time. It was like not so advanced, the internet, but I could see on like what was it called, MySpace, like what was happening in Brooklyn. And I was like, I'll take a trip up from Philadelphia to Brooklyn to see Disgraceland Family Freak Show and Coney Island Circus Sideshow again, and I just started going to all the events, like and because I love watching other people's shows, and learning from watching shows and seeing how people bring the audience to life, and kind of like our conductors of a band, but the audience is the band.
Yeah. Love that picture.
I was over the top enthusiastic, probably a little bit too much.
Yeah, it was a sideshow overload.
Yeah,
but it's something interesting also sort of happens. I had it a little bit. I just performed in Vegas for a couple of months a little while ago, and I had the chance through another guy that I've met, Nick DeFat, to meet a bunch of magicians who I know of mainly through magazines, like magic magazines. And some of these that I have known about and seen on the covers or whatever of these magazines since I was a child. And some of them that I have then seen when I was a child, going to magic conventions with my dad, seeing these people perform. And in something odd kind of also happens when you encounter people first through books or first through that kind of, because then it seems like, they are somehow must be better or greater, or they're different than me on a different kind of level. But then when you meet them, you go, we're exactly the same. We're like all loving the same thing. It's like I've been in this for so long, for years and years and decades, and so have them. So just the fact that you've both been in this kind of industry for the last 25 years, that means that you you have so much in common already. But I can easily kind of imagine that when you meet all these other freaks, and one always feels that oneself is just starting out, or what do I do? I'm just making this shit up. But then looking at these other artists, it's like, yeah, they know where it's at. But then when you meet them, you're going like, no, we're all just making it up.
Yeah,
But
we're all just making it up, and we're all really just kind of like fanboys or fangirls or something along those lines. It's like, everybody who's really enthusiastic about something was also really enthusiastic about other people that were doing it on the way, whether they knew the people or not.
yeah,
You're inspired and influenced by people.
yeah. Yeah, I've sort of been counted Heather Holiday a bit because she got that Australian connection when she's performing in Limbo, and when
Yeah.
we did the Happy Sideshow, we had Scott Maidment. We were like the first show that we were for, I don't know how many years that ended up being, 3 or 4 years. Scott Maidment and Stratton Fret, the people who produced Limbo, and they're big name in Australia and I don't know, around the world. But anyway, she is performing in one of his shows, so we have that shared kind of connection there as well. So she's been a lot in Australia. She's another then example of somebody who started fully in the sort of sideshow world and then have made these forays into other, where you get seen in a slightly different light, and then the gigs open up in other domains or whatever.
Yeah, because her personality is so funny and like charming, in the fact that she almost seems like she just doesn't care and she's just being goofy, even though she's this absolutely like beautiful person that you see her, could take your breath away, and then she's just so goofy and like down to earth and real on stage, but also so crazy skillful with the sword. Like it's like snap of the finger, it's like there's the sword, goes down, no problem.
It's impressive.
So yes, she could do, she kind of moved up into the realm of circus from the sideshow and got some new skills.
It's also it's particular. I love that. It's like when somebody comes on stage with whatever gender, and you're very good looking, but to come on stage and to go, yeah, I'm good looking, but that's not what this is about, and then to be goofy, to do something else, it's pretty awesome, because you come out and we have our own preconceptions of what it will entail if a gorgeous guy or a gorgeous girl come out, and you just expect a certain thing. So to go slightly against that I love that, because it's this sort of subversion that comes just from who you are or whatever, which is same but different in that way, that they look at your clown makeup with sort of black triangles on white face, and it's like it can look intimidating, but then when you speak, as we hear now, you hear that there is a lot of soul and a lot of thought, and that craziness that you see just on the outside there is something more behind it. And I find that sort of interesting, and like I love things that surprise me like that, because when you've been in this for a long time, you sort of go to the level 1 freak show is like, here I have this nail, I'm gonna put it in my face, it's gonna be crazy. Look how crazy it is. I'm sort of going, this was crazy when you didn't say it was crazy, kind of. Or like
exactly. Like
take the facts of these things, which is that most of the sideshow things, the reason why they have become staples is because they reach out and grab your guts, and it's so. The whole flavor of the Happy Sideshow that started out like a working title of what we wanted to do. We wanted to do sideshow, but we wanted to kind of be a sort of happy, celebratory kind of vibe, like sort of, and we couldn't find a name, so it sort of became the Happy Sideshow, and it was like it came more out of what we wanted to achieve that we then couldn't find so it's sort of been playing with that flavor for a long time.
Yeah, well, that's a funny, ironic name, but it also is a happy sideshow, but it's like a celebration of the bizarre. But I was thinking about what you were saying about when you see the surface of somebody, and then when they get on stage, they kind of break that whole thing and bring other aspects of themselves. It's a comes from misdirection, like a magician would uses misdirection to pull you into their world. It's like there's a certain misdirection. It's like, okay, you see my face, but then all of a sudden everything else hits you, and that's when the audience starts to actually relate.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think that's really, it's interesting. I think it's in that surprise. It's like you go, oh, and I think this is a feature of reality in general, that there's always more to be seen, but it's something nice. And I find that, like, when the clown then does something melancholic, or the clown does something beautiful, and everyone's laughing or whatever, and then you go, oh, but then you get this very particular feeling when this stupid guy actually twists the story, and you find yourself moved by it, which I think is this beautiful thing that, to me, Chaplin is like a quintessential example of that. It's like, it's mainly slapstick gags, but then as he got older, and as you get more and more of the depth that the clown can go into, which has more to do with sadness and with melancholy and things that comes out in the kid, and the kind of then up yours to fascism in The Great Dictator and stuff, where he really took sort of clowning into these other directions, or so. And you think you have the measure of this fool that just dawdles about with his spinning cane and his bowler hat and hobo look, but then it turns out that there's a whole lot more inside this character than you first thought. And I think that is just a great sort of flip on reality, where you think you have the measure of something, and then it turns out, oh, it was deeper than I could have thought. So I love that flip when you portray that on stage. So one of the things that I was thinking of is that, as I was reading your book, and you were talking about your learning how to swallow swords, that the person who taught you how to swallow swords got you to swallow a bent coat hanger.
Yeah.
And this is what I was taught by this guy Sebastian Vittorini, after having done many attempts myself, and with inadequate stuff and a perspex stick, and it never, like, I could swallow a thing, but it wasn't consistent or pretty. And then he introduced me to this coat hanger in 1998, and I, for the first time, got to a point where I could actually perform it. But it then made me wonder, where does that come from? Because I don't know where my friend had gotten it from, or where you got it from. Like, how has it become that sword swallowing is taught via using a coat hanger? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know a couple things about it, but I don't know the ultimate origin of the coat hanger. But I can say that economically speaking, not everybody has access to a sword or machining equipment that can take down the edges of a sword. And of course, a coat hanger is different than a sword, because it's just a hanger bent into the shape of a sword. It doesn't have a solid middle. But I think it's a thing of convenience and accessibility. But I also think it can be used in the act. I even use a coat hanger in my act, still, because I can swallow it and then bend it with my neck and stuff. Red Stewart always called it the convincer, because people think that swords are collapsible and it's a magic trick and stuff. A lot of people can't get that thought out of their mind. They think it's totally impossible, and how could anyone ever do it, and all that. So Red had used it as a convincer in his act, as something to say, well, look at this. This is just a coat hanger. It's not you can't buy one of these at a magic shop that folds up, anything like that. So there's a certain aspect to reality. But he learned on a coat hanger from his mentor, you know, in the late 60s, I guess. So it must have been happening.
Wow,
You
that's
know?
great. That just went very far back, like in
Yeah.
60s. It's incredible, yeah, and it must have just spread. And it's true, there's many features of it. It's also like that. It's just ubiquitous. That they are everywhere around the world, those things, and also they are made out of metal, so that it's easier to clean. I think that was one of the things. I didn't know what to swallow, so I got a bit of perspex, long, thick perspex, and then I cut it so that it was a thin sort of square, and I used sandpaper to make it into a rod or whatever. But I think that never got properly cleaned. Like I wiped off it or whatever, but because it's when you've used sandpaper and stuff on it, even though it was all finely done, it was probably filled with micro holes for stuff on the inside. So I kept sort of, in the beginning also, you're just putting stuff down there, and it's a fine line between pushing too hard and pushing enough or whatever, and you just get probably these little micro tears. I was plagued in the beginning with getting throat infections and stuff.
Yeah, that happens, I think, to a lot of people, because it's like you get a sore throat because your throat's not used to foreign objects, and you know, even like the back. Like I didn't even realize how far back my tongue went.
Yeah.
Until I started swallowing swords, I was like, wait, the tongue actually goes all the way to the back of the, like near the Adam's apple, kind of. It's like wow, that's crazy. But yeah, I think also the coat hanger is used, like you said, it's metal, but you know, it can slide, as opposed to something that can't be made, like something that's rougher, that can't be made slippery. You know, it's harder. And when the muscles clamp up, it's so funny that's your survival mechanism. You know, that your throat tries to protect you from from foreign objects, and it ends up killing you by, you know, like if you eating something and it gets caught in the back of your throat clenches up around it, and it's like it makes this tight fist, and you can't even breathe unless you relax and let it out, or do the Heimlich or something.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny, but then you start to realize, you know, oh, I can tighten these muscles, and I can loosen these muscles, and I can gain, you know, full consciousness over this, and you know, I can have to relax my initial fear and turn it into something where it's easy. It's second nature, you know. But in the beginning, it's like so scary and so disgusting, because you're burping and you're gagging, and just like your eyes are tearing, snot's coming out of your nose, you're throwing up in the toilet. It's just like horrible.
Yeah.
Until you get it, of course.
And also there's several stages to it as well. It's like you swallow it, and then you fight your gag reflex first, and then after a while you can get it down your throat. So you get down a certain length, of like a decent length, but then you hit the top of your stomach where it's just like fully closed, and you go, oh, that it feels like you're never gonna manage to open that, because it's a fully involuntary thing. It just closes up. And I have had it myself, and in teaching others, I have then shared this thing on. Then this will go on for a while, where you're just working on the gag reflex and getting it down in the throat section of your throat. And then at some point, usually when this has gotten a little bit boring, but you got to do it the 3 times a day or whatever you're going to like. And at some point there, while you're thinking of something else, all of a sudden it'll just go boom and go a whole lot further. And then you'll pull it out and you'll go, that was incredible. And then you'll be back and it will not open again. And it'll take. Did you have a similar experience?
Get it, and then in the beginning, right? Like sometimes you just get it, and then all of a sudden you'll be like, wait, how did I do that?
Yeah.
But and then sometimes if I don't have the angle right, there'd be a few times where I would be doing stuff like that where I felt like I would get punched in the stomach, like there'd be
Yes.
this like ooh, like kind of feeling like deep down in the stomach. I was like, oh, did I hurt myself? But like, nah, you just kind of, you know, brushed against something you shouldn't have brushed up against.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, after you do it over and over and over again, the muscle memory and the mind body connection starts to become like a second nature.
Yeah.
And all of those muscles wake up because there's so many different ones on the way down into the stomach. It's yeah.
It's a crazy internal exploration, and making certain things which are completely involuntary to be able to reliably control them to some extent. I mean, it is a form of meditation and becoming aware of parts of your body that you don't know exists or that they are there. So you do get this weird, standing there with that coat hanger, using that as a sort of probe. It expands your grasp of yourself, but like it's like you're touching it so that you're feeling through that. And yeah, it's a yeah, you get to feel what it feels like with something inside you, and because you're doing it with your hand, it's like it's this sort of push and pull reciprocal thing of learning what's going on, and the angle of how it's a very peculiar process to learn. And then once you know how to do it, you have that additional odd thing that now I can stick something down my throat. But if you're only then a sword swallower, then it's basically the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
Like that's what the skill kind of is.
Right.
So
Well, it's the same thing over and over again, and that's why there's all these different variations of it, because you're like, well, yeah, sure, that skill is the same thing over and over again, but then what if you put fire on top of the sword, or what if you bend the thing with your neck, or
yeah,
do some special move like lay down with the sword and on the bed of nails and have somebody stand on you or something. There's like these variations have to exist because it keeps it interesting.
yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it is like it's in a with much greater restrictions, but it's similar to juggling in that, okay, I'm going to juggle these three balls, but the fact that you do it in many different ways is part of the fascination with it, because again, somebody swallows a sword and you go, okay, now I've seen this. But then when you have a great sword swallowing act where it is essentially the same thing, but these small or great differences in what happens is really what sells you and hooks you on it. So I think it's an important feature of all creativity is to have these restrictions. The complete open, do anything you want, no restrictions at all. Then it's hard to know where to start or what to do. But when you go, you can only have 23 kilos in your suitcase. When you go, then make the full show out of that. Then you get into high gear on creativity. It's like, and the sword ladder needs to be connected to this, so we tilt it up on its side because we can't have a separate extra. And then some of those great creations that you come up with are shaped by these restrictions, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe it's time to sort of wrap it up a little bit. And I thought that the book starts with this wonderful little I don't even know what it's called, but it's like a little thing that comes before it starts. And I just wrote down a little quote from it where it's like, but just before that, it's like you got a foreword by Matt Fraser as well.
Yeah.
Which was great to see. So that's awesome. Just let's talk just quickly about that, because I met Matt Fraser in 2000 or 2001 when he was doing Seal Boy at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Seal Boy Freak, I think the show was called. So yeah, how did you meet Matt?
Well, Matt was working at Coney Island, and I saw him perform for the first time at one of the Coney Island like spring galas or galas. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I saw him there, and he was performing, doing a push-up competition with Dick Zigun, who Dick Zigun's like was the artistic director of Coney Island, the founder of the Mermaid Parade and all that, and and so it was kind of a joke because they challenge each other to a push-up competition, and Matt's got short arms, and so he can do way more push-ups way faster than somebody with long arms, and it was pretty funny, and
Yeah.
I felt like I knew him when I saw him on stage for the first time, and then he's just an easy person to talk to, at least for me, and anyway, I felt very comfortable talking to him after that, after I saw him do the push-up competition, and
Yeah.
and shortly after that, I was asked to make an interview, a live interview at the Congress of Curious People in Coney Island, between Matt Frazier, who is known as the Seal Boy, and Jason Brott, who is known as the Penguin Boy or the Illustrated Penguin. And so it was the Penguin and the Seal, and Jellyboy as the narrator, or the person who asked the questions, the interviewer, and I asked them all about aspects of their lives, and they're both musicians, like Matt plays the drums really well, and can play almost anything, like sounds like John Bonham, and Penguin plays the guitar and plays like noise and metal on the guitar, and Penguin has shorter arms than Matt.
Yeah.
Matt has arms that are maybe go down to like kind of like his ribs, whereas Jason, he's got no arms at all. He just has hands that grow out of his shoulders, and he loves singing and playing music and stuff. And then of course I challenged those guys to a fight on stage. And they completely kicked my ass, because Matt's like great at kicking and kneeing,
Yeah.
and he kicks somebody in the face, and he's just got such great balance and can knock somebody out with his legs, and Penguin's really good at like headbutting and just like kind of like he's almost like he's got like the muscles of a bulldog or something, because he's like all core muscle and like all neck muscle, so he can just like knock you down with his head. And so they knocked me down, and then Penguin kind of like used me as a surfboard and rode me down the stairs or whatever, and that was a lot of fun. Then we were all great friends after that interview, and then over the years I would always run into Matt at a venue we work at called the Box.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, in New York and in London, and yeah, and I just always felt comfortable talking to Matt. Always liked him, and he got a kick out of me as well, because the stuff that I was doing was at least it seemed more extreme than some of the other stuff that was happening at the time, and it was like making waves and being wild, and yeah. So I asked him to write the foreword, because I really wanted the seal of approval of the Seal. I wanted I wanted a natural born freak to say that what I had written was important and okay. But
Yeah. So great, because I mean it's the freak show has that deep distinction between the born freak and the made freak, or whatever, or like a working act that we are.
yeah.
And it's something just astonishing to have somebody who's born different like that, born different on the outside. It like, because talking about Matt doing kicking, he did smashed bricks with when he was performing with the Happy Sideshow. He did a guest spot in in the show at one point, and he smashed bricks both with his legs and then with his arms, his little arms. He's got phocomelia, I think it's called. It's the with the shortened limbs, and smashed the things, and then smashed a massive brick and smashed it with his head as well. So I would not want to get in a fight with him.
No.
You're a braver man than I. Egging that on. And he may be most famous to the general public, for he was on that TV show, American Horror Story.
Yeah, he was on American Horror Story, and then he was also in his Dark Materials on HBO, which was like Golden Compass's,
television.
Television version of the Golden Compass. And tons of other stuff lately. The acting career is like taken off, and he's doing amazing things. It's so interesting to see a friend, come from performance art and sideshow and kind of underground movements, and then go into the realm where like of actual TV and fame.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's so cool. And so your book sort of bookends with Fire, where I just read this quote where it says, "Beams of light came closer through the smoke. Not the light at the end of the tunnel, but two firefighters with life-preserving respiratory masks. I was carried like a battering ram, head first, face down. How did I get here?" I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it starts with this image and the carried upside down battering ram from that opening thing that you sort of, and then the book starts and you're reading and you sort of forget about it, and then that comes back again towards the end, and you realize it's like, oh shit, it's this is what's been sort of bookending it or whatever. So I don't know if you want to share anything about that and how you then ended up in Iceland.
Yeah, I'm in Iceland right now, and you're in Norway, and it's death and fire were two main themes that were in the book and in my life, and because my brother had committed suicide, so I was trying to sort of duel with death or cheat death myself to honor him. So I would want to do these dangerous acts to come close to death, to brush against it. And then I was also fascinated by fire, and I felt like there were these kind of archetypal characters following me around as much as I was kind of a detective following them around, where in the book it's the misfit mother of death and the elemental fire. They're these characters that are not human or spirits or something along those lines, and death decides to try to take a bite out of me and spits me out. And basically, after cheating death and doing dangerous things on stage, there I am just sleeping in my friend's apartment, and death comes for me in the night. It's like the whole place is on fire when I wake up, and I get caught inside this burning building, and all life and everything flashes before me, and I experience things in slow motion, and I end up getting rescued, and I'm totally conscious during the rescue, but then like in the ambulance, I think I'm fine, and I tell the paramedics that I have a job to do tomorrow. I can't go to the hospital. I got to go to work at Ripley's, believe it or not, and use my flamethrower, and I got a gig in Coney Island. And it's funny, because the gig in Coney Island was in honor of the memory of the bar owner of Cha-Cha's that died. And so I was trying to honor the life of this guy that died in a strange way. And the night before that gig, I get caught in this fire, and then I end up in a coma, and and I'm all in these hallucinations for over a month. And yeah, but turns out death didn't really like the taste of me, I guess.
Yeah.
Spit me out.
Good for us to still have you
Yeah,
here. Well, it's
yeah,
so good. And I think those are the themes as well, and also like it's no coincidence then that the book, the Freaks and Fire book as well, like you have these two themes of death and like the mother, what do you call it? Mother of death? No,
the misfit mother of death is her
the
name.
misfit mother of death, and that comes in and it sort of weaves in because there's as much as the story is a rip roaring story of a young man just living their absolute passion and exploring themselves as an expressive artist in the world. It also has these, like that little poetic passage that I just read, and elements like this where there are poetic aspects of it, little bits of writing in between, not so that you just like a seasoning on top of the whole thing that for me anyway keeps pointing to the fact that there is more going on here and that you're a well-read and well thought through person, and that's reflected in the writing and how strange it is when it all sort of comes in this fire apocalypse in the end, and you are sort of spit out again, and that is it's a beautiful kind of bookending of the whole that part of your life as well, and
Yeah, and that's the whole thing about pain being the teacher, and physical and emotional pain, and somehow all my pain led me to that moment where I was in the fire, where I could experience even more pain and and survive. And it's like, experiencing the death of a loved one is heartbreaking, but then to experience your own death, your own mortality, and not die is a whole other thing. Like to have a near death experience yourself and
yeah,
have to heal and come back from it is like then it's first person as
yeah,
opposed to observing somebody else's death, and how it affects everyone around them. You're like, oh, now I'm dying, and
yeah,
everyone that I know is going to feel the pain
yeah,
of me passing, and I don't want that, you know. And
yeah,
so I'm trying to hold on to life, because there's still so much to do, and there's so many stories to tell, and you
yeah.
know we got to keep
Powerful
going.
stuff. And
Yeah,
then it's like, and then you come out again of this thing, and I was going to say what's happening now, but of course, what is happening is that the Memoirs of a Coney Island Clown and Jellyboy Sideshow Saga is coming out within the next few weeks, and thinking through all of this and the writing process where you are, because of course it's I don't know how many pages the book is. It's like 300 pages or something, or whatever, but it's like it's a whole life. It goes over 15 years or something, or 10-15 years, or
yeah, about 10 years probably.
10 years, yeah. So
Yeah,
obviously you have to edit out a whole lot. You can't tell everything in it, which is where the good writing comes, and
yeah,
how you
yeah,
have told the story. That, like, of course, every story that you tell, there is that might have happened over that week, but we just get these little glimpses of what was important for the journey of the emergence of the clown, or then of the development of you as a freak show artist, or whatever. Like it's and you've just captured that really beautifully, that story. But I'm sure there's a million other things. Now I
oh,
got a little
so
sidetracked on what
many.
it was that I was going
No,
to say.
that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, like there are so many tangents to every
yeah,
story, and I had to cut out about 150 pages,
oh yeah,
to make the story flow properly and not be confusing, and just be a reader friendly kind of story.
yeah,
But what's happening now is, now I'm a father and my child is 2 years old, and the circle of life and death is, I can see it very clearly, and I'm living here in Iceland. I'm a bit isolated. There's a small scene here with drag and burlesque and circus arts, and I'm doing some stuff, but mostly I have to travel to do my serious gigs. And the Squidling Brothers Circus Sideshow are still a group, but my brother's in Philadelphia and I'm here, so we miss each other a lot, and we're feeling like we want to reunite and like really make it big. So we're planning a tour on the end of July where we're gonna just basically be in New York and Coney Island and in Philadelphia, and we're gonna go out to like Ohio and maybe down south, and we're gonna go to Virginia to a tattoo convention and stuff like that. And I'll have the book, and I'll be selling the book along the way. And I don't know if you know this, but last Tuesday I was on America's Got Talent. And
yeah, I did actually I didn't see the act, but I saw from your social media that you had been there.
Yeah, which is strange for me because I've always been like against that show, and I've always been like, I'm never gonna go on that show. It's never gonna happen. I don't want to be judged by these guys. I'm an entertainer. I don't need that kind of approval or whatever. And then they wrote to me over the winter, as they've written to me almost every year, like, and I've always been like, nope, go away. But I was putting out the book this year, so I thought, oh, maybe I should go on TV and, reach a wider audience and see what happens. And anyway, it worked out really well. The act was well received by everybody. And even though, Simon Cowell hates clowns, he ended up, seeing my act as a different kind of an act, and he really liked it. And basically I used a sword with a chainsaw attached to the top, and destroyed a watermelon with it, and then got the flamethrower sword, and then I took out the Tesla coil and had the neon tube end it with like shooting electricity into the neon tube, and it got crazy reaction. I never thought a mainstream audience would like that or would react to it in that capacity, but it was really an overwhelming response to that.
So cool.
And I hope I move on to the next round. I don't know yet, but they're going to tell me sometime this week if I qualify as one of the 55. Got 4 yeses, but But anyway, it's you've been on some of those shows, right?
Yeah, not America or Britain. I've been on a German one and a French one, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I've seen your tennis racket in that capacity, like on like a TV show.
Yeah, I've done also some different TV shows as well, but I have that same kind of attitude that I would go on one of those shows when I have something to sell, or when I have my name on the poster that I try to sell tickets to, or whatever, a project of your own.
Yeah, because like when you come out with your book. Well, your book is something that I'm really, really like excited that it's being created and that you're gonna be putting it out at some point, maybe next year or something. I mean, it's.
I'm hoping. It's so, and I'm like, because there's several things going on, and I can't say that I was not nudged along by reading your book too, because I have a autobiographical book as well. That I have written like a longhand 110,000 word document of already, that has been reshaped over these last few years slowly. But I have, since I got here, and I have been looking through all those notes again and made some great leaps forward in my understanding of how to shape the story and stuff. And absolutely reading yours was sort of, yeah, that's right. It's like, and it has really ignited my desire for that as well, because I've kind of an ambitious idea of how I want to shape the story of what of my life or whatever, or up to a certain point. And but I wanted to, so anyway, that's been great with reading yours and inspiring me and getting my finger out and to make it happen, and also to chug away a little bit every day on my book, The Way of the Showman, which is like a philosophy of showmanship. Have found which is basically what that book is what I talked about in season 2 of The Way of the Showman of this podcast. It's from episode 22 or 23 up until 40 something, so those 20 something episodes. It's those ideas, but those ideas were written down and explained, and I think they all sort of are interesting, but it's not put together clearly enough. It doesn't have a nice enough sort of way to go through it. So I go in and out of things, and the ideas are powerful, but they're not finished. So I'm trying to do that now, make an easier or a better structured way of putting that out. So
people can digest it and wrap their minds around it and bring it into their own lives.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And to connect to it, because I am in there, I am talking very much about ideas and stuff. It's the kind of deep look or deep understanding of showmanship that something that I would have wished existed, that I could have read. Somebody who takes the core aspects of what we do, whether you're doing swallowing swords or you're doing contortion or you're doing singing or whatever. I think that there is something that ties us all together, and I think that the showman is an archetype in the way that Jung talked about it. And I think that I have discovered this structure that I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I have discovered it, but the fact that I have paid attention to it and elaborated and thought a lot about it, about the one who faces the other way and what happens between two people, what can happen being a show or this. And that this is this aspect of existence where stories come from and where religions come from and where healing and all this kind of stuff comes from. So I feel like I have found something that is of deep value to myself, and I'm trying to express that so it comes out in an easily digestible way, so that it can become something you can kind of take with you along as you. So so lots of writing going on for me as well.
Something tangible, like a handbook that somebody can carry around with them that has that that feeling like people carry around like the Tao Te Ching or something like that. It's like if you're a performer, you carry around this book, which has The Way of the Showman. It's got poetic elements and it's got scholarly elements, and it's a philosophy as well, and it's
I would like
can read over and over again.
Yeah, I hope so. And I try to sort of condense things down, and I think rather than trying to explain things too much, exactly what I meant, to find that ratio of making it poetic so that you can live yourself into it and having things clearly expressed and stuff, and making sure, because I think when I was first writing it and doing the second season of this podcast, I was very interested in, or it was important for me to share how this connected to all kinds of other thinkers or whatever, but in that maybe my own direct experience of this, which is usually where it comes from. But then when I have an idea about something that I do and it feels small and just something that I thought of, then it would be almost more important for me to show how this little idea that I had, how that connects up with something that someone with greater credentials than myself have thought, to sort of give it validation. And I think that is important, to connect what we do into a greater context. That is one of the definitions of what depth is, to know how this very strange thing that we do, how that connects to religion, and how it connects to religion and spirituality, and how it connects to entertainment and art and all these things, and how
psychology, philosophy. You definitely reference philosophers and psychologists, psychiatrists of the past, and it's nice because it's it's within like a context of history that that kind of holds it all together and gives it the glue.
Yeah. Anyway, enough about all that. It's been going around in my head for years, and I'm sure all of this stuff has as well. And how long have you actually been writing on the book? How long did it take you to get to this point?
The book. It's funny. I started writing the book as soon as I started becoming a sideshow performer. So the book has been in the works for 20 years, even though,
Brilliant.
even though the book ends in 2012, and it's 2024 now. I started writing the book because I thought, as soon as Sideshow started, I thought, wow, this is like, my life is a story. I have to write this down. I have to keep a diary of it or something. And so the first beginning of it, those first kind of chapters were diary entries that I chopped up and made more polished. There was a lot of crazy writing in there, a lot of like free writing and wild stuff that I had to edit out because it was like, this doesn't make any sense. It sounds like, word salad, like, like a crazy, guys writing it, but ended up being able to get some really good stuff out of all that insanity.
Great. Another similarity. I got into this working on the street and in the freak show in the end of the 90s, and I was keeping a diary as well, also for that reason, because I was like, the stuff that's going on now, it's just crazy. Like, it felt like you're in this vortex of all sorts of where one thing leads to the next, or so. I had my idea of, I'm just going to do this 3-month course at this circus school or so, and then never came back to the religious studies in a formal way anyway.
Yeah.
Nice one. So we have so many little parallels with our stories there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so I will post the link that you sent where you can order the book, and of course, if you could pre-order it, which it's available for pre-order now, if you do that, that's always just totally awesome to have a bunch. And I really think it's a great read, and I think anyone who, if you are already into Sideshow, you will name check all of these people from and it will connect up to stuff that you have heard of or that you've been a part of or whatever. And because we haven't even talked about you going to Norway and meeting my one of the guys, Hover, and being part of a Sideshow festival kind of thing in Norway with Pain Solution. And so we need to get you back on here and talk about how the summer tour has gone. And now we've sort of looked biographically on what you did, because that is what the book is about. And it is, I don't normally just talk about people's biography on here, but here it is, because it's not just what you have and what will be available on the 1st of July is, it is a biography, it's a memoir, but to tell your story, not just here's a bit that happened and here's another bit, but to actually shape it into literature, into a great read, that is not easy, and you've done a great job at that. And I would recommend it to anyone, because if you haven't been into the freak show world at all, this really gives you a glimpse what, at least your way, but what a way of a showman can be. So I recommend everyone getting it immediately.
Thanks. I really appreciate you taking me on the show, because I know a lot of this show is like a solo. It's you talking about your ideas, and to be a guest on the show is a real honor in that way.
So glad to have you on, and so glad to have made a connection, and looking forward to it going on with a fellow writer in these of the underground circus. I'm looking forward to him continuing.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. Yeah. I'll stop that recording.
Cool.
So, as it happens, I turned the microphone off, and of course we veered into a little topic talking about Pain Solution and my old friend Hover Fjell and Morten the Maniac, and I thought it was so interesting that I used my backup recording, where I always leave my iPhone recording as a voice memo, just to in case something doesn't work out. So here you go with a little bit of a 10-minute bonus conversation here, which obviously makes it abundantly clear that we gotta talk a little bit or a lot to Hoverfjell and the Paint Solution crew. So here it is. I'll stop that recording.
Cool.
Good stuff. Awesome, man. So
I know you gotta go to work soon.
Yes, I do actually. Yeah, and I gotta go in 20
Yeah, we ended
minutes.
up talking for like 2 hours. That's great.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's so much, and still, like, I was one of the things is like, going, we got to talk about you going over there and meeting Morten and all of that, because when I saw Morten and doing stuff, it's like he must have taken in a bunch from you guys as well, like of inspiration.
Oh yeah, they definitely did. I think we really changed each other.
Yeah.
As a group, because when the Squidling brothers first arrived in Oslo, it was like Paint Solution they were well choreographed, and they had some humor, but they were like really much more serious.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
I was a comical element in theirs too, and when I did that back in whenever that was, mid-90s or late 90s, whatever, it was I was this comic relief or whatever of it, and they went as they hadn't gone down that route properly yet or whatever. So it's cool to see that like you guys must have just been this alchemical transmutation of each other there. It's excellent.
Yeah, exactly. And like, don't talk about it because it all happened after the book, but after in like 2014, we started doing these circus convergence tours where Paint Solution joined the Squidling brothers, and we were like the Squid Solution, and and then we got joined by Andrew S. from the Swing Shift Sideshow from Vegas, and we were like Squid Shift Solution, and we did these cool tours where we combined our troops and had a lot of fun together and really influenced each other, because like before the Squidling brothers, we weren't really choreographed. We were very improvisational and spontaneous. And when we saw how well this choreography worked with Paint Solution, we started doing that more. And they started being more spontaneous. And so we all became better just by, taking on different aspects of each other.
Osmosis. So cool. We got to explore that. I mean, I realize I have my spare recorder on, so
cool.
Maybe I'll just have this in as well, because I really wanted to talk a little bit about Paint Solution, and got to get Hov on here as well now that he has.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Now that he's kind of retired.
Yes, yeah.
But I never understand that, like retiring from Sideshow. I mean, I do understand that, that some people they want to stop touring and that, but I can't wrap my head around retiring.
Yeah, well, that might be the quest to seek an answer to that, hey? Because me too. I don't know. This is what I do all the times. I don't know retiring. I don't know what would I do if I went doing this. Yeah. We'll find out. We'll talk to him, the headmaster himself, and have him tell us.
It would be very good to hear his perspective on that.
Yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I got to quickly whip some food into me and then hurry up and put
get to work.
And makeup on. Awesome. Looking forward to
all right, yeah.
Looking forward to the next time and to hear how it's gone on the book tour and everything.
Yeah. I'll be in touch, and thanks for talking to me. It's
such a pleasure.
Great to talk to somebody who understands what's going on in my brain.
Yeah, so many little links there to how we have lived our life in the last few decades. So awesome. All right, man. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
Have a good one. All right, fellow travelers. Thanks for coming along on this trip into the literary world of the Sideshow. It's always a pleasure having you here. And please, it would be absolute awesome thing if you just enjoy some of this content that you hear, then just click and subscribe to the podcast. That would be excellent. And until next time, take care of yourself and those you love, and I hope to see you along the way.